The ice wind howled across the frozen wasteland of Valtros 9 as Lieutenant Daniel Brooks dragged himself through the wreckage of his survey shuttle. Blood trickled down his forehead and his left leg screamed with pain, but he knew staying still meant death. The crash had happened 3 hours ago, and already his fingers were going numb despite the thermal suit. He managed to activate the emergency beacon before collapsing against a twisted piece of hull metal. The nearest human outpost was 3 weeks away by standard drive. He would be dead long before anyone arrived. Daniel closed his eyes and tried to stay awake. The cold was making him drowsy, and he knew that was dangerous. His mind drifted to his family back on Earth and to the promotion he was supposed to get after this routine mineral survey. Some routine this turned out to be. A meteor shower had appeared out of nowhere and overwhelmed his shuttle's shields. Now he was alone on a rock of ice waiting to freeze. The singing wind was 2 days off course, and Captain Chertok was not happy about it. The elderly Kelthani trader had spent 40 years building his reputation on reliable deliveries and careful planning. His chitinous exoskeleton clicked nervously as he studied the distress signal his communications officer had detected. It was a human beacon, and humans were new to this part of space. The Kelthani High Council had issued clear guidelines about the newcomer species. Observe but do not engage. Stay neutral. Avoid unnecessary contact. Chertok's second officer Vesika spoke up from her station. The signal is weak but consistent. Whoever it is has maybe a day or two before they freeze. The nearest human vessel is weeks away. Chertok's mandibles twitched in thought. Diverting to help would cost them 6 days total. 6 days meant missed delivery windows and penalty fees. 6 days meant angry clients and damaged reputation. But it also meant someone would live instead of die. The captain made his decision. Set course for the signal. Maximum speed. Vesika's antennae quivered in surprise. Captain, the council guidelines clearly state that we should avoid direct involvement with humans. They are unpredictable and potentially dangerous. Chertok turned to face his crew. I know what the guidelines say. I also know what my conscience says. If we were dying on that ice ball, I would hope someone would come for us regardless of guidelines. Prepare the medical bay. Daniel woke to warmth and the smell of something antiseptic. His eyes fluttered open and he found himself staring at a ceiling that curved in an organic way. No human ship ever did. He tried to sit up, but gentle pressure held him down. A face appeared above him and Daniel's breath caught. The creature was insectoid with large compound eyes and mandibles that clicked softly. Its skin was a deep bronze color and covered in fine chitinous plates. Easy, human. You suffered severe hypothermia and a fractured leg. You must rest. The voice came from a translator device clipped to the creature's chest. Daniel's training kicked in and he recognized the species. Kelthani. Peaceful traders known for avoiding conflict and politics. What are you doing this far out? The Kelthani's mandibles spread in what might have been a smile. Saving your life, apparently. I am Chertok, captain of this vessel. You were very close to death when we found you. Daniel spent 2 weeks recovering aboard the Singing Wind. The Kelthani crew was kind, despite their initial nervousness around him. He learned that humans had a reputation for being aggressive and unpredictable. Most species gave them a wide berth. Chertok visited him daily and they talked for hours. The old captain told stories of his 40 years trading across the sector. He spoke of the Kelthani philosophy of caution and careful survival. We are not a strong species, Daniel. We have no great weapons or powerful fleets. We survive by being smart and staying out of conflicts. But you came for me anyway, Daniel said one evening as they shared a meal. Chertok's food was a fungal paste that smelled terrible, but the captain had insisted Daniel try human rations from the ship's emergency stores instead. Chertok clicked his mandibles thoughtfully. Sometimes being smart means doing what is right even when it is dangerous. You needed help and we could provide it. The mathematics of survival are not always about personal cost. Daniel learned basic Kelthani phrases and helped with simple repairs around the ship. The crew gradually warmed to him. Vesika taught him how to navigate using Kelthani star charts. The engineer Kretinol showed him their unique propulsion system that used harmonic frequencies. By the time they reached the human station at Proxima Outpost, Daniel felt like he was leaving friends behind. The day of departure, Chertok walked Daniel to the airlock. The old Kelthani seemed smaller somehow, or perhaps Daniel had just grown used to his presence. Thank you, Captain, Daniel said, gripping the trader's chitinous forearm carefully. You saved my life when you had every reason not to. That cost you time and money, and possibly got you in trouble with your council. Chertak's antennae twitched. Some things are worth the cost. Go and live well, Daniel Brooks. Perhaps our paths will cross again. Daniel hesitated, then pulled out a small data chip. This has my personal comm code. It will stay active no matter where I am or what happens. If you ever need help, any help at all, you call me. I will come. Chertak accepted the chip with amusement clear in his clicking speech. You are young and earnest. I appreciate the sentiment, but an old trader like me rarely needs the help of Space Navy officers. Still, I will keep this. A reminder of the human I once rescued. Daniel smiled, and his expression was serious beyond his years. I mean it, Captain. You call and I will come, and I will bring friends. The airlock sealed, and Chertak watched the young human disappear into the station. He clutched the data chip in his claw and clicked softly to himself. Humans were strange creatures, impulsive and emotional, but perhaps that was not entirely a bad thing. He returned to his bridge and ordered the ship to resume their course. They had deliveries to make and time to recover. 15 years would pass before Chertak would think of that data chip again. 15 years before he would discover whether a young human's promise meant anything at all. The Galactic Council chamber was designed to make everyone feel small. The vast circular room could hold representatives from 200 species, and today it was packed. Ambassador Lisa Grant stood at the human podium, watching the chaos unfold with growing frustration. The Kelthani delegation was pleading for help, and every other species was finding reasons to look away. She had seen this pattern before. When power threatened weakness, the strong made speeches while doing nothing. Ambassador Zetran of the Kelthani people spoke with desperate clicks that the translation matrix converted to standard speech. The Vorik Dominion has invaded 3 of our colony worlds. Their fleets are moving toward our homeworld of Kelthera Prime. We have minimal military capability. We are asking the Council to intervene under the mutual defense protocols. The reptilian ambassador from the Vorik Dominion hissed from his podium. The Kelthani colonies were in disputed territory. The Dominion is simply claiming what is rightfully ours. Lisa watched as species after species offered meaningless platitudes. The Centauri expressed deep concern. The Andrathi called for peaceful negotiation. The Solarian Collective suggested forming a committee to study the issue. Nobody was willing to commit military forces. Nobody wanted to risk war with the Vorik, who had one of the largest fleets in the sector. The mathematics were brutally simple. The Kelthani were weak and had little to offer. The Vorik were strong and vindictive. Helping the Kelthani meant making an enemy of the Dominion. Lisa requested permission to speak, and the council moderator acknowledged her with visible reluctance. Humanity is new to this council, but we understand the basics of honor. A species is facing extinction, and we debate semantics. The Vorik ambassador cut her off with a threatening hiss. Humanity should be careful about making commitments it cannot keep. The Dominion has no quarrel with Earth, but that could change. Lisa met his cold gaze without flinching. Humanity does not make threats, Ambassador. We make promises, and we keep them. But even as she spoke, Lisa knew the political reality. The Terran Assembly had not authorized military intervention. The Joint Chiefs were advising caution. Earth had trade agreements with several Vorik client states. Starting a war over the Kelthani would be expensive and politically difficult. She returned to her quarters after the session feeling sick. Her aide brought her reports from the front. Kelthani cities were burning. Civilian casualties were mounting. The Vorik were not interested in occupation. They wanted the Kelthani worlds empty and ready for colonization. On Kelthera Prime, the situation was deteriorating by the hour. Chertak stood in a refugee coordination center that had been a school just 3 days ago. The old Kelthani had retired from trading 5 years earlier, and now served as a city administrator. He watched the screens showing Vorik warships in orbit. Their bombardment was systematic and ruthless. The Kelthani defense forces were little more than system patrol craft. They died bravely and uselessly. Chertak helped coordinate the evacuation of the southern districts. Families arrived with whatever they could carry. Younglings clicked in fear while their parents tried to remain calm. The center had supplies for maybe 2 more days. After that, they would be at the mercy of the invaders. He had lived a long life and seen many things, but never had he felt so helpless. The Kelthani had survived for thousands of years by being careful and avoiding conflict. Now that caution had left them defenseless. That evening, as explosions lit up the distant sky, Chertak retreated to his small office. He was exhausted and his joints ached. He sat at his desk and his mind wandered to the past. He thought of the singing wind and his years among the stars. He thought of the human he had rescued on Valtros 9 so long ago. Daniel Brooks. The young lieutenant had made a promise. You call and I will come, and I will bring friends. It had seemed like the earnest words of a grateful youngster, nothing more. Chertok accessed his personal files. The data chip with Daniel's comm code was still there. He had kept it all these years, though he had never used it. Why would he? What could one human do against an invasion fleet? But as he listened to the sounds of his world dying, he realized he had no other options. The Council had abandoned them. Their own military was shattered. If there was even the smallest chance that promise had meant something, then he had to try. His claws shook as he activated the communication. He did not know if the code still worked or if Daniel even remembered him. The signal transmitted and Chertok composed a simple message. His pride rebelled at begging, but his people were dying. Daniel Brooks, this is Chertok of the Singing Wind. I do not know if you remember me, but my people are dying. I have no right to ask, but you once made a promise. We need help, please. The message launched into the void. Chertok sat in his office and felt every one of his years. He had been foolish to hope. Humans were busy with their own concerns. One old Kelthani traitor did not matter in the grand scheme of galactic politics. He should focus on the evacuations and helping as many people as possible. That was the practical thing to do. That was the Kelthani way. Survive. Adapt. Do not expect miracles. But even as he tried to be practical, a small part of him remembered the young human's eyes, the absolute certainty in his voice. I will come, and I will bring friends. Chertok had lived long enough to know that most promises were empty, but he had also learned that humans were different. They were violent and unpredictable and emotional. They did things that made no logical sense. Sometimes that was dangerous, and sometimes just maybe that was exactly what you needed. The comm code transmitted across light years of space. It passed through relay stations and military networks. It moved through the vast infrastructure of human expansion until it reached its destination. Aboard the flagship USS Defiant in the Arcturus sector, a priority message alert chimed. Admiral Daniel Brooks was in a strategic planning session reviewing defensive deployments. He almost ignored the alert, but something made him check the source code. His heart stopped when he recognized it. After 15 years, Chertok was calling. Admiral Daniel Brooks stood frozen in the middle of his strategic planning session. His officers watched in confusion as their normally composed commander went absolutely still. The message played again through his neural implant. Chertok's voice was older and tired, but unmistakable. Daniel felt 15 years fall away. He was back on Valtros 9 freezing to death until a Kelthani traitor risked everything to save him. He remembered Chertok's kindness and the crew of the Singing Wind who treated him like family when they had every reason to fear him. Commander Victor Hayes cleared his throat. Admiral, is everything all right? Daniel's jaw tightened and his eyes refocused with absolute clarity. Contact Fleet Admiral Helen Carter immediately. Priority Alpha clearance. Tell her I need to speak with her right now. The bridge crew moved quickly. They had served under Brooks for 3 years and knew that tone. Something serious was happening. Within 5 minutes, Daniel was in his ready room on a secure channel with the Supreme Commander of all Terran forces. Fleet Admiral Carter appeared on the screen. Her silver hair was pulled back severely and her expression was tired. She had been dealing with the Kelthani situation for the past week. The political pressure was enormous. Daniel, you look like you have seen a ghost.
What is going on?
Daniel straightened, and when he spoke, his voice was absolutely steady. Ma'am, I am requesting immediate authorization to deploy the 5th Fleet to Kelthani space. The species that saved my life 15 years ago is under attack and they have asked for help. Carter leaned back in her chair. She knew the story of Daniel's rescue. Every officer in the fleet knew it. Brooks used it in training lectures about why first contact protocols mattered. But deploying a fleet was not a simple decision. Daniel, the Terran Assembly has not authorized military action. The Voric Dominion has 37 client states and a fleet that rivals ours. If we intervene, this could escalate into a major war. Are you sure about this? Daniel met her gaze through the screen. I gave my word, ma'am. Chertok risked his career and possibly his life to save mine when he had every reason to leave me to die. I promised him that if he ever needed help, I would come. I intend to keep that promise. Carter was silent for a long moment. She thought about politics and trade agreements and casualty projections. Then she thought about what it meant to be human. What it meant to keep your word when it mattered. You will have your answer in 6 hours, Admiral. But start preparing your fleet now, just in case. The connection cut, and Daniel immediately opened a fleet-wide channel. He composed a message carefully. Every word mattered because he was asking people to risk their lives. The message went out to every Terran vessel in 3 sectors. 15 years ago, a Kelthani merchant captain named Chiratak saved my life. He diverted his ship and risked everything to rescue a stranded human he had never met. Today, the Kelthani homeworld is under attack. They are outmatched and dying. Chiratak has asked for help, and I intend to answer. I am requesting volunteers to join the 5th Fleet in a relief mission to Kelthani space. This is not an official deployment order. This is a personal request. Who is with me? The response was immediate and overwhelming. Captain Nicole Webb of the USS Endeavour replied within 30 seconds. My crew stands ready, Admiral. We have not forgotten what the Kelthani did for you. Give us coordinates and we are gone. The heavy cruiser Valiant under Captain Ryan Foster was next. The Kelthani showed humanity what honor looks like. Time to return the favor. Commander Jake Morrison brought his destroyer squadron. He was a veteran of the Centauri Wars, and his message was blunt. We do not abandon people who helped us. That is what makes us human and not like those council cowards. Within 2 hours, 47 ships had pledged to join the fleet. Some were military vessels. Others were merchant ships with retrofitted weapons. A few were private security contractors who saw an opportunity to fight for something that mattered. 3 retired veterans in an old patrol boat called the Lucky Strike volunteered. Their message made Daniel smile. We are too old to care about politics, Admiral. Just tell us where to point our guns. The news spread beyond official channels. On Earth, the media picked up the story. Public opinion shifted rapidly. Commentators who had been urging caution found themselves drowned out by a tide of support. Social networks exploded with the hashtag #KeepThePromise. Civilian groups began organizing supply convoys. Defense contractors offered equipment at cost. The Terran Assembly found itself facing enormous pressure from its own citizens. Senator Patricia Morgan stood on the assembly floor and read Chiratak's message aloud. Her voice shook with emotion. This is what we claim to stand for. Loyalty, honor, keeping our promises. A single Kelthani captain risked everything to save one human. Now we have the power to save his entire species, and we are debating trade agreements. What does it say about us if we do nothing? The vote was called and authorization passed by a significant margin. The Terran military was cleared to intervene in Kelthani space. Fleet Admiral Carter contacted Daniel 6 hours after their first conversation. You have your authorization, Admiral. More than that, you have the largest volunteer fleet ever assembled. 89 warships are converging on your position. Dozens of support vessels are right behind them. This is unprecedented. Daniel felt a weight settle on his shoulders. 89 ships meant thousands of lives depending on his decisions. Thank you, ma'am. We will not let the Kelthani down. Carter's expression softened slightly. Daniel, I know why you are doing this. Just remember that you are not that lieutenant anymore. You command a fleet. Do not let emotion override tactics. The assembly point was a system designated simply as Rally Point Omega. Over the next 18 hours, ships arrived from across human space. Daniel watched his tactical display fill with friendly icons. Dreadnoughts and destroyers, cruisers and corvettes, medical ships and supply haulers, even armed civilian vessels who refused to be left behind. His second officer, Lieutenant Commander Sophie Turner, worked frantically to organize them into a coherent battle formation. The final count was staggering. 89 military vessels, 43 support ships, 22 armed civilian craft. Together they formed the largest human fleet ever assembled in peacetime. Daniel stood on the bridge of the Defiant and felt the weight of history. This was not just about saving the Kelthani. This was humanity making a statement to the galaxy. We keep our promises. We protect those who helped us, and we do not care what it costs. He opened a fleet-wide channel. All ships, this is Admiral Brooks. Thank you for answering the call. What we do today will define humanity for generations. The galaxy thinks we are aggressive and unpredictable. They think we cannot be trusted. Let us show them they are right to fear us but wrong about why. We are going to Kelthera Prime, and we are going to stop this invasion. Not for resources or territory or political advantage. We are going because 15 years ago one Kelthani captain chose kindness over caution. That choice saved my life. Today we honor that choice. All ships prepare for jump. We have a promise to keep. The fleet jumped as one. 89 warships and all their support vessels vanished in a flash of twisted space. They would arrive in Kelthani space in 36 hours. And when they did, the galaxy would learn what it meant when humanity gave its word. General Cross of the Vorok Dominion stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching Kelthera Prime burn. The invasion was proceeding ahead of schedule. The Kelthani defense forces had been destroyed in the first day. Their cities offered minimal resistance. Another week and the planet would be ready for Vorok colonization. It was all very routine. The general had overseen a dozen such operations in his career. Small species with no real military capability made for easy conquests. His tactical officer suddenly stiffened. "General, we have multiple jump signatures forming at the system edge." Cross barely glanced at the display. The Kelthani had no reinforcements coming. Their few allies were staying carefully neutral. Probably just merchant traffic that wandered into the wrong system. His officer's voice rose with urgency. "Sir, those signatures are massive. I count at least 80 capital ships and they are all broadcasting Terran identification codes." Cross felt his blood run cold. That was impossible. Humanity had no strategic interest in this backwater system. The Kelthani offered them nothing. No rational species would risk war with the Dominion over such an insignificant prize. He pulled up the tactical display and felt his certainty waver. 89 Terran warships had just jumped into his operation zone. The fleet composition was overwhelming. Dreadnoughts that massed twice what his flagship did. Carrier groups with hundreds of fighters. Destroyer squadrons that could shred his lighter vessels. The communication came on all frequencies. "This is Admiral Daniel Brooks of the Terran Defense Fleet. To all Vorok forces in Kelthani space. You have 6 hours to withdraw beyond the border. Any Vorok vessel remaining after that deadline will be considered hostile and engaged without further warning. This is your only warning." Cross recognized the tone. This was not a bluff or negotiating position. This was a human making a promise, and humans kept their promises. The general immediately contacted Dominion High Command. The Council of Admirals appeared on his screen. Supreme Admiral Vexthon's scales darkened with anger. "Explain why there is a human fleet in your operation zone, General." Cross chose his words carefully. "The humans have deployed overwhelming force to defend the Kelthani. I have 43 ships. They have 89, including 6 dreadnoughts. I request immediate reinforcements or authorization to withdraw." Vexthon hissed and consulted with the other admirals. The conversation was brief and heated. Finally, the Supreme Admiral turned back to Cross. "The Kelthani system is not worth war with the Terrans. We have no interest in fighting humanity over this minor prize. Withdraw all forces immediately, return to Dominion space, and await new orders." Cross felt humiliation burn in his chest, but he was not foolish enough to argue. He had studied the humans. They were relatively new to the galactic stage, but they had never lost a war once committed. Their combat doctrine was aggressive and their commanders were unpredictable. Fighting them would cost the Dominion dearly. The order went out to the Vorok fleet: disengage and withdraw. His captains responded with confusion and barely concealed anger. They had been on the verge of complete victory. Retreating from a defeated enemy was shameful, but they obeyed because the alternative was facing the human armada. Cross watched his ships begin their withdrawal and swore quietly. The Dominion would remember this humiliation, but for now, survival took precedence over pride. Admiral Brooks watched the Vorok fleet pull back from Kelthera Prime. His tactical officer, Lieutenant Commander Sophie Turner, monitored their movements closely. "They are heading for the border, Admiral. All vessels are complying with the withdrawal order." Daniel allowed himself a moment of relief. He had been prepared to fight, but avoiding bloodshed was always preferable. "Form defensive perimeter around Kelthera Prime. I want combat air patrols and sensor nets covering every approach. If any Vorok vessel so much as twitches wrong, I want to know immediately." The fleet moved into position with practiced efficiency. Dreadnoughts took high-orbit positions. Destroyer squadrons formed patrol routes. Fighter wings launched and established air superiority over the major cities. It was a massive show of force designed to send a clear message. Kelthera Prime was now under Terran protection. Captain Ryan Foster of the USS Valiant led the humanitarian mission. His medical teams began beaming down to the surface. Field hospitals appeared in refugee centers. Human doctors worked alongside Kelthani medical personnel treating the wounded. On the surface, Chirtok watched the sky change. Where Vorik warships had darkened the clouds, now human vessels formed protective rings. He could hardly believe what he was seeing. The old Kelthani had sent one desperate message expecting nothing. Instead, an entire fleet had answered. 89 ships, thousands of humans who came to fight for people they had never met, all because of one promise made 15 years ago. A shuttle descended near his refugee coordination center. Chirtok made his way outside on legs that trembled with age and exhaustion. The shuttle doors opened and a human in full-dress uniform emerged. Admiral's insignia gleamed on his shoulders. The human was older now with lines around his eyes and gray at his temples, but Chirtok recognized him immediately. Daniel Brooks. The young lieutenant he had rescued was now a fleet commander. Daniel walked forward and rendered a crisp military salute. Captain Chirtok, I apologize for the delay in responding to your message. We came as quickly as we could. Chirtok's mandibles quivered, and his translator struggled to convey his emotion. You actually came. I sent one message and you brought an entire fleet. Daniel smiled and the expression was warm despite the military formality. You saved my life when you did not have to. Did you really think I would forget that? Chirtok looked at the ships overhead. But I am just one old Kelthani. One traitor who made one decision 15 years ago. Why would humanity risk war with the Dominion for that? Daniel followed his gaze to the fleet. Because that is who we are, Captain. You showed me that kindness matters. That helping someone in need is worth the risk. We are returning the favor. Every ship up there volunteered to be here. Every captain and crew member chose to honor your decision from 15 years ago. The old Kelthani felt something break inside him. Pride and gratitude and disbelief all warred together. He had spent his life being careful, avoiding risks, staying safe. The one time he had chosen differently, the one time he had helped when he should not have it, had saved his entire world. You humans are impossible. You do not think like any other species. You make decisions that defy logic. Daniel nodded with a slight grin. We have been told that before. Usually right before we do something everyone else thought was impossible. The humanitarian effort expanded rapidly. Human engineers arrived to repair damaged infrastructure. Supply ships brought food and medical equipment. Psychologists helped traumatized Kelthani families. Captain Nicole Webb coordinated the reconstruction of the planetary defense network. Within 3 days, the immediate crisis was over. Kelthera Prime was scarred but safe. The Vorik had withdrawn completely. And overhead, the human fleet maintained its protective vigil. General Cross delivered his report to the Dominion High Command from the safety of Vorik space. The humans deployed overwhelming force without hesitation. Their fleet coordination was exceptional. They showed no interest in negotiation or compromise. My assessment is that they were prepared to fight regardless of cost. Supreme Admiral Vexthon listened in silence. When Cross finished, the Supreme Admiral spoke carefully. The humans went to war over a promise. One officer kept his word and they brought their entire fleet to support him. What kind of species does that? Another admiral hissed softly. A dangerous one. We should avoid provoking them further. The humans have shown they value loyalty over logic. They will fight for reasons we do not understand. Vexthon's scales rippled in thought. Agreed, the Kelthani system is now off limits. Pass the word to all Dominion forces. Any species under human protection is not to be touched. We cannot predict how they will respond, and that makes them too dangerous to challenge. The meeting adjourned and Cross was dismissed. He left knowing the balance of power had shifted. The humans had introduced a new variable to galactic politics. They actually kept their promises no matter how much it cost them. The Galactic Council chamber was silent as Ambassador Lisa Grant entered for the emergency session. The mood had changed dramatically since the last meeting. Where before there had been political calculations and careful distance, now there was uncertainty and a touch of fear. The human fleet had changed everything. Humanity had deployed overwhelming military force not for conquest or resources, but to honor a personal debt. The galaxy was still trying to understand what that meant. Ambassador Zetran of the Kelthani stood at his podium, and his translator carried his words clearly. The Kelthani people formally request a mutual defense alliance with humanity. We offer our friendship and our eternal gratitude to a species that proved loyalty matters more than political convenience. Lisa stood and her voice was steady. Humanity accepts. We will draft the Kelthera Accord and present it to this council not for approval, but for witness. Let it be known that the Kelthani are under Terran protection. Any act of aggression against them will be treated as an act of aggression against humanity itself. The Vorik ambassadors sat in stony silence. Several other species shifted uncomfortably. The implications were clear. Humanity was establishing that they would fight for their allies regardless of strategic value. That single principle changed the entire calculus of galactic politics. Smaller species that had lived in fear of larger predators suddenly saw a possible shield. Over the following weeks, embassies from a dozen minor powers reached out to Earth requesting discussions about potential alliances. The Kelthera Accord took shape rapidly. Ambassador Lisa Grant and Ambassador Zetran worked together to create something unprecedented. It was not just a military treaty. It included cultural exchange programs that would send Kelthani scholars to Earth and human students to Kelthera Prime. Economic integration that gave Kelthani merchants preferential access to human trade routes. Joint scientific initiatives to share technology and research. Most importantly, it included a provision that any Kelthani vessel, anywhere in the galaxy, could request Terran protection, and that protection would be granted without question. Admiral Daniel Brooks was promoted to fleet admiral and given command of the newly formed Kelthani Defense Force. The permanent fleet stationed in Kelthani space included 15 human warships and support vessels. Training programs began immediately to help the Kelthani build their own defensive capability. Human tactical instructors worked with Kelthani officers. Engineers helped design new ship classes that combined Kelthani technology with human weapon systems. The goal was not occupation but partnership. The Terran Assembly held hearings on the intervention. Some representatives questioned the cost and strategic wisdom. Senator Gerald Price spoke for many when he argued that humanity had overextended itself for minimal gain. Fleet Admiral Helen Carter testified, and her words were broadcast across human space. The senator asks about strategic gain. Let me be clear. We gained the knowledge that humanity keeps its word. We gained the respect of dozens species who now see us as potential allies instead of potential threats. We gained proof that we are not like the other powers who measure everything in resources and territory. That is worth more than any mineral deposit or trade route. Public opinion on Earth was overwhelmingly supportive. The story of Chirtak and Daniel Brooks became legendary. Schools taught it as an example of why character mattered. Military academies used it in ethics courses. The phrase "keep the promise" became a rallying cry that appeared on everything from political banners to commercial products. Humanity had found something they could be proud of. They were the species that honored their debts no matter what it cost. On Kelthera Prime, reconstruction continued at an impressive pace. The scars of the Vorik invasion slowly healed. Human construction teams worked alongside Kelthani laborers to rebuild damaged cities. Parks were replanted. Infrastructure was modernized. The refugee centers were transformed back into schools and community spaces. Captain Ryan Foster remained with his medical teams for 3 months, helping train Kelthani doctors in trauma treatment techniques he had learned. During the Centauri Wars, the monument was unveiled 6 months after the fleet's arrival. It stood in the central square of the capital city, where the worst fighting had occurred. The statue showed a human and a Kelthani reaching toward each other. Their hands were clasped together and both figures looked upward toward the stars. The inscription was carved in both languages. One act of kindness, an entire fleet's answer. This is how alliances are born. The dedication ceremony was attended by both Admiral Brooks and Captain Chirtak. The old Kelthani could barely stand now, but he insisted on being present. Chirtak was offered a position as special advisor to the Kelthani government. His age made active service impossible, but his experience was invaluable. He spent his days helping shape the new relationship between humanity and his people. Young Kelthani, who had never left their homeworld, now dreamed of serving on human ships. Trade between the two species flourished. Kelthani harmonic drive technology interested human engineers, while Kelthani merchants gained access to vast new markets. The partnership was proving beneficial in ways nobody had anticipated. The Vorik Dominion quietly adjusted their expansion plans. Supreme Admiral Vexthon issued new operational guidelines. Any system within 5 jumps of human space was now off limits for military action. Species that established formal alliances with Earth were added to a protected list. The Dominion had no desire to test humanity's resolve again. Several border disputes that had seemed headed for military action were suddenly resolved through negotiation. Nobody wanted to be the next species that made humanity deploy its fleet. Other powers took notice. The Centauri Federation approached Earth about expanding their existing treaties. The Andrathi Collective proposed joint military exercises. Even the cautious Solarian Commonwealth began discussions about increased cooperation. Humanity's reputation shifted from dangerous newcomers to valuable allies. The galaxy was learning that humans were unpredictable but reliable. They might do things that made no logical sense, but once they gave their word, they kept it absolutely. Admiral Brooks stood in the garden on Kelthera Prime, looking up at the stars. The garden had been planted by human and Kelthani volunteers working together. The plants were a mix of earth flowers and native Kelthani fungi, creating something beautiful and unique. Chirritac joined him, moving slowly with the assistance of a support frame. The old Kelthani's health was declining, but his mind remained sharp. Do you think other species will learn from this, Daniel? That kindness has value beyond simple mathematics. Daniel considered the question. Some already have. We have received formal requests for alliance discussions from 7 species in the past month. Minor powers who spent decades living in fear now see a possibility of protection. The galaxy is realizing that strength without honor is temporary, but loyalty builds something lasting. Chirrtac's mandibles clicked in what might have been satisfaction. And the rest. The ones who still only understand force and fear. What about them? They will figure it out eventually. Or they will figure out what happens when they threaten our friends. Either way, the message is clear. Humanity is a power now, and we play by different rules. Chirrtac's antennae quivered with amusement. You humans are so sentimental, making decisions based on emotion rather than logic, starting wars over promises, risking everything for friendship. Daniel smiled at the gentle teasing, but also so dangerous when crossed. That is exactly why I like you. Above them, the combined fleet continued its patrol. Terran destroyers flew in formation with new Kelthani defense corvettes. The crews had trained together until they functioned as a single unit. Human officers served on Kelthani ships and Kelthani navigators worked on human bridges. The integration was not just symbolic. It was practical and effective. 2 species learning from each other and becoming stronger together. That was the real promise of the alliance. Captain Nicole Webb brought her ship, the USS Endeavour, back to Kelthera Prime for a scheduled rotation. She had been part of the original fleet that answered Brooks' call. Her crew had adopted a Kelthani orphanage, providing supplies and volunteers. The children loved the human visitors who told wild stories and played strange games. One young Kelthani asked her why humans had come to help. Nicole knelt down to the child's level, and her answer was simple. Because someone asked for help and we were able to give it. That is what friends do. The child considered this. So we are friends now, humans and Kelthani. Nicole nodded. Yes, we are. And friends protect each other. The child's mandibles spread in the Kelthani equivalent of a smile. I want to be a fleet captain when I grow up, just like Admiral Brooks. I want to help people like he helps us. Nicole felt her throat tighten with emotion. Then study hard and be brave. The fleet will be waiting for you when you are ready. The galaxy continued to turn and politics continued to shift, but the alliance held firm. Years would pass and new challenges would arise, but the foundation laid by one rescue and one promise remained unshakable. Humanity had introduced something new to the galactic stage. They had shown that loyalty mattered, that promises had weight, that kindness could be strategic without being calculated. Other species would adapt or they would fall behind. The age of cold politica,